Hey everybody, welcome back to Gideon Stuff. Today we're reviewing the BladeHQ exclusive Real Steel G5 Metamorph Flipper Tanto. I think that's the name of the knife. Let me check my notes. I have it pulled up here. Real Steel G5 Metamorph Tanto BladeHQ exclusive. Okay, whatever. Yeah, I was right. So this is a knife designed by Stop Hell. And I got this a while ago. I've had this knife for a long time during the time of recording, and I wasn't going to review this knife because this version is actually sold out. When I last checked, the satin bladed version was still in stock, but probably won't be for very long. By the time this video comes out, they might be gone, so I apologize, but there is always the chance that BladeHQ will do another run, so fingers crossed. But anyways, I'm kind of running out of stuff to review, and since I had this laying around, I was like, you know what? Yeah, let's review that. So that's exactly what we're going to do. All right, so let's get into our blade length measurements and size comparisons, and I have lost my little ruler that I normally use, which makes me very sad, but we'll use the back side of my calipers. A little less easy, but what we can see here is we have a blade length coming in at 3.5 inches, pretty much. So that's really, really cool. Good size. A little bit longer than you might expect, just because this knife is so slender. It feels smaller than it is. Let's get into our size comparisons. Here is the Rat 1. And so, yeah, there you can see what I mean. About equal cutting edge between the two, but the Metamorph is definitely a lot smaller. Here is the Rat 2, and even though it's longer than the Rat 2, it definitely feels smaller because it's so much thinner. It's one of those things where you have to hold it to kind of see. Next up, let's do our Civivis. There's the Elementum. And here's the Praxis. There we go. So not a whole lot shorter than the Praxis, but again, feels a lot smaller because it's not as fat. Okay, let's grab our bug out. There's the bug out, and oops, there's the PM2. Cool, cool, cool. And I do not have one of the original Metamorphs, the front flippers, to compare this knife to, and I'm kicking myself because that would be the best size comparison to use, but I don't have one. So we're just going to compare it against some other Tantos that kind of remind me of it. I realize I don't have that many Tantos in my collection. I like Tantos, but I guess I just don't keep very many of them. But anyways, here's a Tucson TS49. I think this is actually a pretty good comparison. They're very similar in length. The Metamorph is just a hair longer, I think, but they're pretty comparable. And then we'll compare it against another budgety Tanto. This is the Civivi Fracture. There we go. Alrighty, so with all that stuff out of the way, what are we looking at in terms of materials here? We have a blade of 14C28N. Great, I love that. It is a Tanto, as I've been saying, with a compound grind. You can see that little swedge there. I think we have, no, we've got flat grinds on both portions of the blade. Handles are G10, steel clip, steel liner lock, running on bearings. Yeah, did you see that action? We'll get back to that. But, yeah, there we go. Let's go ahead and go do some cutting, and we'll be right back. Right before I started this video, I actually yeeted the Real Steel G5 Metamorph Flipper Tanto BladeHQ exclusive right into the dirt. So we'll see how that affects the action. Speaking of the action, let's jump into that first. I made a video a long time ago called The Most Drop Shutty Budget Knife, featuring this knife. Very nice flipper. It just drops.
like, if you don't get your thumb out of the way in time, finger guillotine. Your thumb's coming off. Well, maybe not. This is a pretty light blade. But still, it'd be painful. It'd be a little bit of an owie. Action, fantastic. Honestly, if you're into drop shot action, which definitely is fun. I don't like all my knives to be drop shot guillotines, but it is fun occasionally. And so if you're into that, this gets, I mean, especially for a budget knife, this is a 10 out of 10. Fantastic, fantastic. How are the Ergos? They really aren't. I mean, the knife is comfortable in your hand. You have excellent jimping up here. Love that file-like jimping. That's exactly the type of jimping that I want on all knives. Great jimping. There's nothing that's super pokey. If you're really bearing down on this knife, some of these corners here on the G10 are a little bit sharp, but it's not terrible. The knife just, it's not very, it doesn't have any real ergonomic lines. It's basically just a straight line on both directions. But you can grab it. It does fit in your pocket. Or in your hand. Now let's talk about how it fits in your pocket. So here's the clip. Deep carry clip with button screws, although the clip itself is recessed, which means no wiggle, which is nice. I do wish the screws were flat. How's it going in the pocket? It got hung up on the screws. Push it down all the way. Yeah, this just is not a knife to wear with jeans, honestly. The clip itself works fine. Like, this is a good clip. The clip goes in and out of the pocket fine, but the button screws are a problem. I have worn this knife, or carried this knife while I've been wearing, like, basketball shorts. And it works a lot better there. Plus, it's not a super heavy knife, so, yeah. But, yeah, as far as in jeans, the clip's just pretty much unacceptable. The knife itself, though, is pretty lightweight. It's very thin, so the carry, really, the profile isn't terrible. All right, let's go ahead and cut some stuff. Come here, you little piece of cardboard. We'll just cut this little triangle. So Tanto blade, 14C28N. Love that steel. Great steel. It's a flat grind. It does not get super thin behind the edge. I mean, it gets decently thin. I'll take a blade behind the edge reading later. I can't right now because my calipers are broken. But the blade stock is not super thick, so it's perfectly slicey. Perfectly slicey for an EDC knife. Let's do a little pull through. That could have gone better. Of course, this knife has been used, so do with that as you will. But you don't really get a whole lot of leverage when you're pulling through a cut. Let's do some pushing. I do not think this knife is going to do very well. However, it does have this Tanto tip, and it is a compound grind, so we are a little bit thicker out here. So it might get through this stuff pretty without too much trouble. Here's a good spot. I hope you guys can see that. Yeah, you should. Okay, it did terribly. And that was just because the blade is so thin, the knife is so light, it has no pressure behind it. So, yeah, that did not do well. But for the size of the knife, for the weight and everything, it's what I was kind of expecting. Let's do this. Ooh. Okay. All right, so we got them decently thin. We got decently thin slices. Not completely, though, and this first one was a complete failure. And that's because I could feel that this was a little bit thick. That flat grind that's so short was a little bit tough getting through here. We do have quite a bit of a bulge right here, so it was hanging up on that. But not terrible. It didn't do terribly. Anyways, let's get back to the table, shall we?
All right, so the Real Steel G5 Tanto Flipper Metamorph. What am I liking? What am I not liking? So first of all, this is one of those knives that just folds up completely into itself. I really, really like this. Knives like the CEO from CRKT, this knife, the original Metamorph, which I have never owned. I have handled once, but I'm not going to be really talking about that knife compared to this one because I just don't have very much experience with the front flipper version. Should get one these days, but whatever. But yeah, folds up completely into itself, makes a nice slim package. This is going to be really nice for a lot of people who want to carry something very discreet. Speaking of which, this is a very lightweight knife. Like, this knife weighs almost nothing. It is super lightweight. I don't talk about weight that often on this channel because I don't really mind super heavy knives. I carry a 4 Max Scout sometimes, so obviously I don't care about weight that much, but this is very, very light. And I'll talk about one of the main uses I got out of this knife. If you check my Instagram, I've had this knife for like 4 months, 5 months at this point. 4 months. I can't remember. I can't remember when I got this knife. I think it's been 4 or 5 months. But I haven't posted too much about it on Instagram. And that's because I really only carry this knife in one very niche way. I carried this, and I still do, when I go on runs. I like to, keep in somewhat decent shape. And so I like to go running, especially when I'm at college, like I am right now. And the best time for me to go running is at night because, I've got work and school going during the day. Night is kind of my time. And so I'll put on some basketball shorts and I'll go running around the streets and stuff. This was a great knife to carry because it rides in basketball shorts really well. It's very thin. It's very lightweight. I could put it in there and it would just disappear. And I'd go running and I didn't feel like knocking against my leg or anything. It was just very, very nice to carry. And I figured that it would also be just kind of a great knife to have for anything that I might need a knife for while I'm off running in the dark. Bad case situations aren't like the primary reason I was carrying this, but I think it definitely would have worked pretty well for that. But, just if I had to cut something, like one time I went running and I got my shoelace caught in something and, I was able to kind of cut my way out of there and stuff, just things that you might need to cut. So there we go. It was a briar bush. Shoelace was completely ruined. Had to replace a shoelace, but that's what you get. So, yeah, there was that. Very easy to carry, very lightweight. And that's someplace where this knife really excels. The next thing, this blade is nice. I'm sure there are a lot of ways to use this very well, especially if you are a more tactically minded person and trained. I am not. I actually have taken one class, one summer on knife fighting, but I'm not an expert. I wouldn't even say I'm a novice. It was basically just something I did for fun. And, I'm not really a tactical guy, but I'm sure this could be useful in the hands of someone in that way. It's a good package opener. Tantos are great for opening packages and stuff. We'll talk more about the blade later, but, it's definitely unique. It's a good-looking knife, too. I like that a whole lot. It's a really good-looking knife. The handles give you a good amount of grip. And the Ergos, by the way, that's what we'll go into next. The Ergos are very nice. Pretty neutral Ergos, but it does fit your hand. It fills your hand more than you would expect. It's not really contoured, but it has these ridged chamfers all around the edges that do give you some good grip. The jimping up here on top of the blade, it's actually really good jimping. I like it quite a bit. And yeah, overall, it's just a very good knife. It's a very tactile knife. Good texturing on the G10. Not like rough, but very, you can really index this knife pretty well in a lot of different ways. So that's nice. I do like the Ergos on this knife quite a bit. The pocket clip is nice. We'll talk about the pocket clip later, but It's got good spring tension, goes in and out of the pocket just fine. And yeah, really, really good as far as that goes. Let's talk about the action. I've been holding off the action for a while, but it's time to finally talk about it. Whoops. I made a video a while ago titled "The Most Drop Shut Budget Knife" or something like that. You can look it up. And it was about this knife because yeah. This is absolutely a drop shut action. And for a $40 knife, which, this spoiler alert, this knife costs $40, that is absolutely insane. Especially since the blade is so small and light. Yeah, that is scary. And there's no blade play or anything. But that is a very, very drop shut guillotine knife. Really, really cool. The detent on this knife is excellent. So flipper tab here, light switch only. This push button will hurt. In fact, a couple of times I've hurt myself on flipper tab because I kind of missed it. We'll talk about that later, but listen to this detent pop. I hope you guys can hear that. Because there's this distinct pop of the detent breaking and then the sound of the knife locking up. I don't know. And this knife, you cannot fail it. Let me try. Let's do like one of the weird little cheater things. If you really want to try and fail a knife, grab it kind of like this and just kind of squeeze with your knuckle. Ouch, this hurts. That triangle flipper tab is pokey. I did fail it. But again, that's basically a surefire way to fail a knife. This is just an absolutely fantastic detent. Yeah, that is so snappy, so drop shut. That's absolutely just bonkers how it does that. But anyways, that's what I like about this knife. Let's go ahead and get into what I may be not liking so much. So the first thing I really want to talk about, this knife was not perfect when it came to me out of the box. The centering was off quite a bit. And when I first got this knife, I was planning on doing the review fairly quickly. Obviously, that didn't happen. But, you know, I didn't want to fix the centering because I wanted to show in my review, hey, the centering was off, this is what it looked like. But I noticed that as I was using the knife, the centering fixed itself. And you can see that now the knife is just about perfectly centered. Yeah, I'd say it's pretty much perfectly centered. So that's interesting. I thought that was kind of weird. That's good. And like I said, there is no blade play. I think I'm just flexing the knife since it's so thin. But, you know, that's interesting. That's good, but, you know, I do have to mention it was not centered out of the box. Next thing, I do wish the clip was reversible. I think that would be cool, but it's not. I'm sorry, lefties. Next thing, I do wish they had flat screws. When I was carrying this in basketball shorts, this didn't really affect anything too much, but trying to put this in jeans, that became a big problem. So flat screws, just better. I do like that the clip is recessed. It prevents you from getting clip wiggle, but I do wish the screws were flat. So yeah. Next thing, there is a little bit of detent lash. Just a little bit. If I just kind of do that, you can see here look at the, right there. It's not a huge deal, but, you know, it's there. And then the lockup this is how it was out of the box. That is, bad about 70%. Where did I put my flashlight? There it is. Grab this so we can show you guys this. Focus. Yeah, that's 75, 80%, maybe even 85%. That is very late lockup. I'm not a fan of super early lockup, and I'm definitely not a fan of super late lockup. I think that does give this knife a shortened lifespan, we'll say, but who knows, it might be fine. I haven't used this knife that much, so, you know, if I keep this knife and I keep using it just as much as I have been, it'll probably be fine, but, you know, if you do want to get this knife as an EDC that you carry around all the time, that might become an issue. And that kind of leads me to the next thing is this knife actually feels pretty cheap in my opinion. I don't know, it feels cheap. That lockup, the lock bar is very thin. I don't know. It's one of those things that I can't really explain. Like, it feels kind of cheap. This G10 is not my favorite G10. Honestly, if you told me that this was plastic, I would believe you. It's just not my favorite type of G10. It kind of reminds me of Civivi G10, honestly. Oh, I guess something I could mention is I do kind of like this backspacer with the hidden lanyard post. That's nice. Add that to my likes, but I don't know. This knife feels cheap, and it is cheap. It's a $40 knife, $39.99. I got mine on sale for $30. BladeHQ is having a special sale. When was that? What sale was that? Labor Day? I can't remember, but it does just feel cheap. I guess part of that is the hollowness, the lightweightness of it, the flimsy lock bar. Even the fact that it says drop shut to me kind of feels cheap. I know a lot of people like this just complete drop shut action, and while I definitely admire it for being neat, I'm not necessarily the biggest drop shut fan. In fact, where is it? There it is. This knife here, this is my Minax. This knife has broken in after months and months of use, after me tinkering with it, to be about the way I like an action. Yeah, that very smooth, controlled drop, that's really nice to me. In fact, for me, that's a lot nicer than that. But that's just me. That's just me personally. Next thing that I don't really like about this knife is the blade for me just isn't really a performer. It's not super thick behind the edge, but it has this very low, flat grind. The blade is actually thicker than you might expect. I usually compare Bladestock thickness to the Rat 1. Let's bring him out. Yeah, I think he is thinner than the Rat 1, but for a knife of this style, I would definitely like it to see it be a lot thinner. Let's compare it against the Elementum. Yeah, it's thicker than the Elementum. For me, the blade just didn't perform the way I wanted it to. It's not a particularly good slicer. It's a good piercer, and again, if you're just opening packages and stuff, it works pretty well. But for me, the performance did leave a lot to be desired. Just wasn't my favorite thing, and I'm someone who really, really likes performance. It didn't do it for me. So yeah. And then the last thing I'll talk about is that the flipper tab can be a little bit painful sometimes if you don't get it just right. If you're not, you gotta get on that shelf and then go, because again, the detent is strong. So if you're not sitting on that shelf, if you get it up here, it probably won't deploy and you'll just end up scraping off the back, and it don't feel good. So yeah, that's something. Okay, let's go ahead and go to my final conclusions. My final conclusions are, this is an interesting knife. Ostap Hell's a great designer. I like the design of this knife. The price is good, and honestly, this knife probably has one of the most amazingly tuned actions of any budget knife that I've ever felt. It really does. Probably has the snappiest detent, and it's obviously probably the most drop shut budget knife I've ever felt right out of the box. So that's really, really cool. However, it's not a performer like I would like, and it does feel a little bit cheap. For $40 though, if this is your style of knife, I can definitely recommend it. I think you will enjoy it if you like drop shut action, if you don't really care that much about slicing capability, if you want a sleek, slim, low profile carry, I think this will be really great for you. Very lightweight, very sleek, as I've already said. For me, the action is fun, but it just doesn't really give me the fizz. So that's where I'm going to leave it. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you did, leave a like, comment below, and subscribe. If you didn't like the video, leave me a comment telling me why, and I'll see you in the next one. Adios.